Thank you. Thank you all for joining us for today's ASCE Texas section webinar. Our presentation is the US 290 program, Success Through Change Management. The webinar is the second in our series of monthly webinars for 2018. I would like to thank the branches for hosting different viewing sites across Texas. As a state association for civil engineers, we are happy to provide this service to the engineering community. If you are not a member of ASCE or the Texas section, I invite you to become a member so that you can benefit from being part of our professional organization. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, we have Mike Zentek. He is the HNTB Senior Public Involvement Representative. Mr. Zentek is an award-winning Senior Public Involvement Representative in HNTB's Houston office. He has extensive experience in comprehensive communication strategies. Prior to joining HNTB, he served as a television news reporter for 15 years in Houston and San Antonio, as well as other locations in Texas and Arizona. He has served as a Senior Public Involvement Representative for TxDOT's US 290 program since May of 2007. Our second presenter is Leanne Napolillo. She is the Program Management Consultant, PMC, for HNTB as the Program Manager. Leanne is the Vice President at HNTB Corporation in the Houston office and HNTB Program Manager for TxDOT 290 program. Ms. Napolillo has over 20 years of experience managing complex transportation projects from planning through design to construction. She has served in multiple leadership positions within the American Society of Civil Engineers, notably as the Texas Section Vice President for Education, the ASCE Houston Branch President. She's a recognized fellow of ASCE and the recipient of the 2014 Texas Section Professional Service Award. In 2012, the ASCE Houston Award of Honor, and in 2005, she was named the ASCE National Edmund Friedman Young Engineer of the Year. Currently, she is the past president of the ASCE Construction Institute. Her degrees come from Kansas State University for her undergraduate in civil engineering, and for engineering management, the University of Houston. And we will now turn it over to our presenters, and thank you again.
Thank you, Russell. To give you an overview of what we're going to be discussing today, our agenda is up on the screen. We'll give you a brief overview of the 38-mile, $4.7 billion story that we will discuss today. We will overview the program management scope and what our HNTB team was brought on board as an extension of TxDOT staff to help shepherd them through the 290 process. We'll discuss the interim implementation concepts that have been engaged as we develop the 290 corridor. We'll touch on a few of the program challenges and fun that we've had along the way. And then as we get to the end, we have about 10 minutes of animations, 3D renderings that you can see what it is that we're building along our corridor. And that's what we're going to use as our flex time. So if we run out of time and talk too much, then we'll show a couple of those videos, because I do want to save some time for questions. To show you where we are in the Houston area. To orient you, this is the 610 loop here. Our 290 corridor starts on the northwest side of Houston at the 610-290 interchange, travels 38 miles northwest through the city of Houston, through the Beltway 8 interchange, through City of Jersey Village, through 1960 and Highway 6, through Harris County and the suburban parts of our corridor, through the Grand Parkway or State Highway 99, which did open to traffic as we were under construction, and it extends out to the Waller County line. So it's a 38-mile total project. Now, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? As you can see from here, this is actually a picture where we're sitting right outside our office window here of the 610-290 interchange. You can see that we're highly congested in both directions. Here at the heart of our interchange, we do have more than 200,000 vehicles that utilize our interchange daily, and a corridor population that's projected to increase from almost 700,000 in 2010 to over 1 million in 2040. So the primary issues the state was faced with was a severely congested roadway, portions of US 290 that do not meet current roadway design standards, and the roadway facility does not provide adequate capacity for existing and future traffic demands. To address those issues, the state embarked upon a major investment study, which was performed between 1999 and 2002. In 2003, the results of that major investment study were approved for implementation by HTAC, which is the local planning organization. And in 2003, the environmental impact study process was initiated. The HMTV team was brought on board in 2006 to help shepherd TxDOT, or help TxDOT shepherd the 290 corridor through development. And in 2010, we were awarded the Record of Decision, which is the environmental approval to proceed with construction. This next slide, wrong way. This next slide shows you what the ultimate vision that we are working for on the 290 corridor. To orient you, this top slide here shows the existing pre-construction condition of 290, which is 3 lanes in each direction, plus a 1-lane reversible high occupancy vehicle lane, the HOV. And that was barrier separated between the 3 lanes of each traffic. The solution that was recommended and approved through the environmental process is to expand and widen Highway 290 to 6 lanes in each direction. And then in addition, to add a new location facility, a managed lane facility along Hempstead Road, which parallels 290, that would also add 2 lanes in each direction. There was also the recognition that we needed a multimodal solution here. And so TxDOT, as we went through the environmental process, provided for environmental clearance of a 50-foot reserve for high capacity transit. Now, this was a regional solution that was agreed to by multiple partners within the region, and essentially TxDOT had ownership of the 290 solution for constructing the 290 widening. The local toll road partner assumed ownership of the Hempstead Tollway and for shepherding that through the process. To give you an overview as to what the program management scope was and what the HMTV team performed as the extension of staff, there were 5 primary elements that were involved in the work that we supported TxDOT for. The first one is design. There were 8 section design consultants that were brought on board to support the PS&E development of the 290 corridor. In addition, there were 5 TxDOT in-house design teams that helped to provide design support and provided 5 of the design contracts that went to construction. The PNC provided design oversight and coordination with all 13 of those teams. In addition, we provided environmental support through the multiple reevaluations that coordinated or that happened through this process. Additionally, we provided program management services to include financial reporting, cost estimating, and the associated activities with that. Now, with the 38-mile corridor that we underwent along 290, that required 375 right-of-way parcels to be acquired. So we also supported the right-of-way acquisition process to include appraisals, negotiations, eminent domain support to include expert witness, and relocation support. On the utility side, we coordinated more than 130 utility agreements in support of more than 600 utility relocations along the corridor. That included engagement with City of Houston, City of Jersey Village, the various MUDs along the corridor, CenterPoint Gas, CenterPoint Power, 12 telephone, cable, and internet companies, and 14 pipeline companies. We also continued post-design through the construction phase services, and I have another slide that provides more information on that, so I'm not going to give too much information here. The last aspect that we've been engaged with since the beginning is public involvement. So it's very important to the state to engage and keep the public informed, and so one of the requirements is our contract, and we have had open since 2006, is a public office. So we've had a dedicated program office that's open to the public where they could come and ask questions through the entire process of environmental right-of-way acquisition, design, and now construction. As I said, the state, it was very important to them to keep the community and affected property owners informed and be responsive to their input. There's a lot of information on this slide, so I'm going to take you through quite a few things on here. Starting with this first one, you can see that it has number 45, number 21, and over here on the right-hand side, number 13 of the 100 most congested roadway segments. TxDOT, one of the ways that they prioritize funding and assign funding based on their constrained budget restrictions is they develop a list annually of the 100 most congested roadway segments in Texas. This, in essence, is their 100 biggest problems that they're identifying. And so these are the current numbers that we have right now. Our 610 interchange over here on the right-hand side is number 13, and then in between 610 and Beltway 8, we're essentially number 21, and Beltway 8 to Highway 6, we're number 45. That's an indication of the level of traffic and congestion that we have that we are dealing with through construction in here. The next part I want to point out, you can see all the different colors in here. This 290 was implemented or has been implemented as a design, bid, build, development project, meaning that we designed the PS&E before we went to construction letting. Early on, we worked with the contracting community to determine what the best value target was for lettings in order to segment the projects into logical termini and provide best value low bids for the state. Working with the contracting community, we determined that about $150 million is our target of the max contract bidding that we could package these together. And so we actually early on ended up with 12 different construction segments in here. Due to a couple additional constraints that were added along the way, we ended up letting 13 different construction projects. But to orient you, we started in construction over here at the 610 interchange. We reconstructed everything all the way up until the Highway 6 interchange. And then from just past Highway 6, that's a widening and primarily within existing right-of-way. So 375 right-of-way parcels that I talked about were primarily between 610 and the Highway 6 area. Now to speak a little bit more about the bottom half of this page, as you can see, we had our contract awards in here. In the widening section, which is the left-hand side, our widening bids varied from about $30 to $60 million. The reconstruction and the highly complex or congested areas, we had bids from $60 to $150 million. Talking time frame, we did start with our first construction letting in May of 2011 and our last one through June of 2015. So we did have phased implementation of the corridor as construction was identified, or I'm sorry, construction funding was identified. We implemented the lettings throughout the corridor. The second to last row indicates the contractors they're working with. You'll see 3 names on there. As I mentioned, this is a design, bid, build. So we had the low bid environment, and we had 3 low bidders that won the project on this. When we first started, we actually had 4 bidders or 4 contractors that we were working with. We did have one additional challenge in there that one of our contractors defaulted a couple of years into the project due to non-performance. So the state worked with the surety to select or reselect a replacement contractor for that one, and we did end up with one of the contractors that already been out on the corridor. As status, all 13 of our current project, all of 13 of our construction projects are currently under construction, which is a little north of $1 billion of construction. And as you can see on the bottom side there, all of them are greater than 60% complete, and most of them are approaching the end. As it states on there, we are working towards completion this year for our 290 construction. Then we'll talk a little bit about getting into some of the challenges and the fun that we've had along the way. This is the same slide that we talked about earlier, though. Showed there's 6 lanes in each direction along 290 and 2 lanes in each direction along Hempstead. And remember, I talked about this was TxDOT taking the ownership for the 290, and the toll road was taking ownership for the Hempstead toll road. And that was a $4.7 billion solution, with about $2.5 billion of that assigned to TxDOT and a little over $2 billion to the toll road authority. And they had a 25-year implementation plan for that, which is the 2037 that you see on there. In the early 2012 time frame, the state and the local toll road authority worked together and realized that if they pooled their limited funding that they had available at that time, they could provide traffic solutions to the public in a much improved fashion or a much faster solution than previously. And so they basically collectively worked together and came up with what we call the managed lane solution. This was not eliminating the Hempstead Toll Road. It was essentially deferring that for later and putting all of the focus on 290. So basically, instead of splitting up the two corridors, one was TxDOT and one was the Toll Road Authority, they both agreed to share the 290 TxDOT right-of-way and pool their resources and make that happen. Now, in comparison, you can see up here on 610, on 290, we had 6 lanes in each direction. The managed lane solution did add 1 lane of general purpose capacity in each of the inbound and outbound main lanes. So we went from 3 existing to 4 general purpose, plus 3 of the managed lanes, which if you think about it in the peak direction means that you have 7 lanes in each direction, or 7 lanes for the peak direction. So that is roughly equivalent to what we ended up with on the FEIS. TxDOT proceeded and we went forward with that solution, and by June of 2014, we had let 10 of the 13 construction projects, and we were well underway with construction. I mentioned June of 2014 because that was when the local Toll Road Authority and the state decided to discontinue their partnership and basically part ways and allow TxDOT to continue working on 290 completely on their own. That's important because essentially the local Toll Road Authority that participated in that one reduced their funding commitment at that point. And so even though we were under construction, the state had to find ways to reduce cost because they had reduced funding availability. So in order to address that, as we were under construction, we proceeded with what we call the revised lane configuration. And so as you can compare here, basically the footprint of what we were building stayed the same. We just reconfigured. Instead of a 4-3-4 configuration, we went with a 5-1-5 configuration, which means that we had 5 general purpose lanes in each direction, plus a 1-lane reversible HOV. Now those cost savings came into play because most of the costs that had not been implemented yet was associated with the connections between the HOV, or the managed lane in the middle, and the adjacent park and ride facilities. So if we utilize what was out there today, which if you remember the existing condition is a 1-lane reversible barrier separated HOV, we could capitalize on the park and ride facility connections that are already out there and save substantial funding and come in within the budget that the state already had. So this bottom part here is we went to public meetings in September of 2015 to present this to the public, and this is what we are completing construction on currently. So with that, I've talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to highlight some of the challenges that we have faced along the way. The first one is on the design process, and we have had both ends of the spectrum with budget funding slowdowns and budget accelerations. On the acceleration side, the availability of construction funding, and based on what our lettings, we had one of our $152 million construction projects that was essentially designed in a little over 100 calendar days. And so we have had significant acceleration on there. The lessons learned that we had on both the acceleration and the slowdown is that it's very important to understand your work plan and to understand the critical path items that are on the work plan and what you can use to efficiently either move things forward or to prioritize so that you can proceed in a better fashion as you have funding availability. On the construction side, as we went through, we have had multiple iterations of what we are constructing as we go along. Those have been a lot of lane configurations, and we have tried as much as possible to utilize the same concrete footprint as what we were building and just reconfigure the lane widths, or reconfigure the lanes along that footprint. So one of our important lessons learned is the importance of a flexible design. You need to be able to leverage the available space to build within previously approved right-of-way as you're making changes and to minimize the environmental impacts. The next challenge I want to discuss is managing change during construction. We would all like to live in the perfect world of having your right-of-way acquired before construction started, but based on the availability of construction funding and a few other constraints, we did have we'll say a significant amount of our construction projects that started construction before right-of-way acquisition was complete. As you know, that both impacts the right-of-way acquisition and the utility relocations that need to be done before you can do your storm sewer construction and everything else. So in order to mitigate that, we had a couple different priorities that we had. But the first one, we prioritized right-of-way acquisition. We looked at our traffic control plan and determined which were the priority parcels and make sure that that was where the focus was as we are planning the ED or the focus of our efforts. The second one, we implemented multiple traffic control mitigation strategies, and specifically we used those for utilizing traffic control workarounds around existing utilities in places where, for example, we had acquired the right-of-way, but the utility, due to their own constraints, hadn't been able to relocate yet. And so we were able to do temporary solutions with the storm sewer or traffic control in order to keep the progress moving forward. And the implementation of interim concepts, as I discussed earlier, one of our main priorities was to make sure and avoid rework. And so whatever had already been put in the ground for the concrete footprint, we tried to utilize that as much as possible. We did have a few things that just happen along any normal construction project or can happen along any normal construction project. As I mentioned, we had the contractor default in 2015. We've also had a few weather events that have occurred and caused fun as we went through our process. Specifically in 2015, we had the Memorial Day floods. In 2016, we had the Tax Day floods, which we thought both of those were significant events until 2017 came and we had the week-long Hurricane Harvey factor that implemented in there. And then continuing that theme, we actually had a couple ice days this year that we have also already had to address. But along with that, provides additional constraints on the contractor for getting things done and moving forward and forward progress. When they partner with the state for emergency response, it's a good thing, but that does detract from the forward progress they're trying to do on their construction. On the organizational side, given the fact that we have spanned a few years of construction here, we have had an evolution of, we'll call it the construction management organizational structure. When we first led our first projects out for construction, TxDOT was managing the construction and housing that with TxDOT inspectors. As we transitioned along, the PMC started to provide support, whereas TxDOT still managed the construction, but we provided inspection support for that. And so there was a transition of knowledge that was associated with that. As we went along later and TxDOT was dealing with constrained resources and restrictions that they had internally, they transitioned to a consultant management construction oversight. And so again, that we were there supporting them through the knowledge transfer of that. But in all that, of course, you still have to keep construction going and moving forward. The next one, I'm going to turn over to Mike for a couple of these, and he's going to talk about some of the public involvement challenges we faced.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Yes, you'll see we touched on this a little bit earlier, but the importance to TxDOT of a dedicated public information office. This was something that the TxDOT used during their last really large project in our area, the Interstate 10 project. It worked very well because there are so many questions. Questions specific, whether it's right of way, whether it's construction, whether it's what are you going to do, where's my entrance, where's my exit. And it helps to have that place where you can go, one-stop shop is the way to describe it. And you see coordinated message between agencies. That helps as well because we have a lot of partners, as Leanne mentioned, anywhere from the City of Houston, City of Jersey Village, Harris County Toll Authority. It's so important to have a unified message. You want to make sure that not only do you have one place to go, but the message that everyone says is the same. That's extremely important. Whether it's folks asking about right-of-way or whether it's a community asking, how wide is the road going to be and where's the exit going to be relocated. It's important to have that one place that everyone knows to go and everyone knows that to stay on this message and here's what the message is. And progression of public concerns. It's really fascinating to go through and see how the calls and the emails and our presentations have changed. At first, when we started acquiring the right-of-way 7, 8 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, it was, hey, am I impacted? How much? What's the process? What am I, what am I going to do? Why do you need this? Right-of-way was an enormous question, really before construction began. And then it became, there you have the questions about access. How am I going to, okay, you're going to acquire this right away. All right. If I'm the property owner or I want to buy this property, how am I going to get there during construction and once you're said and done? So you saw that evolution. And then once construction began, that dominated everything, of course, because at this point it becomes real. We had a lot of folks who would say, like, when are you going to get started? I don't believe you. Well, once they start seeing, you know, the komatsus out there and the earth turning, it becomes very real. And then folks want to know, okay, well, how wide is the road going to be? Why is this entrance or exit closed? Why can't this entrance or exit be open? Why can't we have a temporary one? How high is it going to be? We even have folks ask, you know, I've had people ask me, why is so much of the construction equipment yellow? You know, that sounds like it, but it's true. People have all kinds of questions, and they want to know what's being built, what's this thing going into the ground. You know, people see the cages being built for the columns, and they're like, well, what's that? Because it's supposed to stand up in the air, and they're building it, you know, horizontally. So people have questions about what they see. Message from ahead, not behind. This has been extremely important to TxDOT from the beginning. We wanted to get into communities and present before right-of-way acquisition began, before construction began. And we made a huge effort to do that. This had really begun even before I got here, and I've been here since May of 2007. The idea of locating, and you even have different, I guess, not so much hoops, but who are you going to communicate with? Closer into our corridor, closer to downtown, the neighborhoods are older. And so you've got voluntary HOAs, and you generally have one person to contact. So then as you move out, it really becomes a question of they have professional management companies. So you may know someone, but you've got to communicate with a company. Maybe it's here in Houston, but some have been in San Diego, some have been in Dallas. So the goal is find those folks, reach these people before you get there. That was enormous because, as Leanne mentioned, we had changes. We had funding changes. We were going to build it one way, then we're going to build it a second, then we're going to build it a third. Because we'd spoken to these folks already, we had gained their trust in most cases, and that really helped because then they thought, okay, well, they've been here before, they shot straight with us, they've been level with us, and we trust that they're going to get us through this, and that we trust their explanation as to why. And that was really, really important. At the time, it was a big effort. You weren't really quite sure what the payoff would be, but we knew we wanted to get our message out there. And in the end, when it changed, the goodwill that we had developed with these communities, not just civic groups, business groups as well, in different areas, kind of little clusters. They generally talk, and one person that we knew, a key contact, would share word with people in the strip center or across the street that this is what's going on. And it really helped to develop that goodwill. Evolution of social media. This is going to be kind of amazing to hear, but when we started, there was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. And Twitter especially. Twitter, TxDOT as a whole really likes to use Twitter. It really seems to lend itself to what we do. You know, it's quick. I know that they've expanded their characters a little bit. But for the most part, it's very quick. You can send out a quick message. You can send a picture. You can send a short video. We've had to learn how to use that. You know, and also things on your website, you don't have to post it to Twitter, but you can. TxDOT can post links to things like whether it's a detour closure graphic or it's exhibits that we showed at a public meeting, information meeting, whatever thing you do to the public, you can link to the website via Twitter. And there are a lot of people who enjoy using Twitter over anything else. Our Twitter followers have doubled in about 2.5 years. Actually, really less than that, man. I think it was about 2. People like to use it. It's quick, it's fast, and we've gotten a lot of use out of it. And it's amazing to think that we didn't know what that was when we started, but nevertheless, there it is, and it's been proven to be a good tool for us. And here's communications. Now, we mentioned dedicated, just some bullet points over the various ways we get our message out to the public. There's dedicated public information office. We tell people, you can come visit us. We're right here. We see our construction. We can see it out our window right now. Business meetings. This was something that TxDOT, we started back, it was late 2013, early 2014, when construction was really starting to gear up and move forward. We have these once a month. There's some nice folks at a church that allow us to use a room there. We have it the first Tuesday of every month at 8:30 in the morning, and this is where business owners, tenants can come and ask us questions about the construction. We have TxDOT staff, PMC staff, there are construction consultants to TxDOT who are also there. And it's a forum where folks can ask the questions, and this has worked out very well. One of the challenges was to find a place. We would love to go move along different parts of the corridor, but in truth, it's good to have a central place. It's about 8 miles away from our office, and for the most part, folks are able to get there. Stakeholder presentations. We have done, oh my gosh, we've done about 350 of these. And this is to the various business, civic groups, realtors. Realtors have been extremely important to us, both residential and commercial. They want to know what's going on. And it may be because, they want to get an edge on their competitors. But it is important for them to know, to be able to tell their clients what's going on, or at least tell their clients where they can go to get information about US 290. Commercial realtors especially. Our website, www.my290.com. The website has a ton of information on it, all from maps that show the FEIS through the 3-lane to the 1-lane. All that is on there. Our animations are on there. There's Twitter at My290Houston. We have a newsletter you can see there in the bottom right. There's a picture of it called The Review. Our goal is to put this out quarterly. We are working on our next one right now, but this goes out electronically. We also have 200 or 300 copies printed that we'll distribute at presentations or if people come to see us here at our office. But the newsletter, we want to highlight the latest and greatest what's going on and what's coming ahead. Automated lane closure notifications, those are extremely important. I myself live on the corridor. I'm Highway 290, a street called Antoine, which is about, I guess 3 or 4 miles away from 610. So I'm not way out in the suburban area, but my neighborhood has been impacted. So I myself will see signs on Antoine as I'm driving toward 290 that are telling me that something is closed or something's going to be closed, and it's good because I can make sure that goes with our notices. Speaking of that, automated lane closure notifications. We send out 3 of these really per week. 2 are sent out. There's a system that TxDOT has, and the Texas A&M Transportation Institute sends those out on Monday afternoons and Thursday afternoons. But because so much of our important work is done on the weekends, we send one out on Friday, and this is text-based. And we want to make sure that all that work, because there's a lot that's going on. Obviously, a lot of our work is complete, but not all of it. And so we want to make sure that people know what's going on the weekend. I'm going to skip down to know before you go, because the dynamic and the portable message signs, I mentioned that a bit. They help get our message out there. They're the permanent ones, of course, that show the amber alerts, but they can also show major closures and the temporary ones that are put on the side streets. But know before you go. That is really important. We tell people, especially on the weekend, please take time to look at our closure notices. There's a system, Houston Transstar. You can look in there. I've had people say, I don't have time to do that. I'll just go through there. And I'm telling them, please take time to look. What looks like a really long detour in some ways may end up being shorter, because there are certain things, and we have to educate the public on that. There were folks who were frustrated because they were pouring a bridge deck and they didn't understand why they couldn't drive past it even after it was done. And we had to explain to a couple of our emailers and callers that, well, you can't drive by it because you will vibrate it, and that will basically, it will crack it. You cannot cure correctly. Here I am using a term I didn't know before I worked here either. And so it's important to get those kind of things out. Animations. These were developed for our 3 major interchanges, 610 to 290, 290 and Beltway 8, 290, Highway 6, and FM 1960. And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, an animation's worth 100,000. Here is 610. This is where real construction, we apologize for this. This is a disclaimer we need to put up here. But this is where construction began in June of 2011. And this is coming from 290. I'm on the west. I'm coming inbound, going toward downtown, coming towards 610. You can see here the main lanes are in gray, and then we use color. The HOV's in green, and you also have ramps that connect 290 and nearby Interstate 10. You see they're called express lanes. The one from 290 to 10 is in yellow. The one from 10 to 290 is in blue. And most of the work here at this interchange is done. Those direct connectors, this is from a public message. This is one of the things that folks could really, really latch onto, because in the past, before those were made, people coming on 290, coming on to 610, going south, if you wanted to go south on 610 or you wanted to go on I-10, you had to share the same gray space here that you see kind of at the top and to the right. But with that yellow ramp and with that purplish blue ramp, now you have your own lane. You have your own roadway to do this. No longer are you having to share space and somebody wants to go to the right for the left and vice versa. You're on your own ramp. It improves mobility, and we feel it enhances safety here as well. There's the HOV you see in green. There's an exit there that allows you to leave here. You can actually, that's a road called West 18th. And it's important also, you see we've got landmarks. You can even see Whataburger down at the bottom. That's 18th Street. People left, they know, they were like, oh, now I know where I am. HISD, the Houston Independent School District, has their main building right here. There's a Sheraton Hotel that's kind of up there, and then our building is right here kind of down at the bottom. Those gray buildings you see, that's where we are, so we're right there. We also, there's Northwest Mall. We also like to have a 360. You'll see as we like to give that 360 spin so you can get not just one view, but several. And these animations really honestly are worth their weight in gold. And this is a shot from our building, really where we are, looking south. And there are those lanes again. There's the yellow lane that takes you to I-10 from 290, and the blue lane that takes you from that takes you to I-10 to 290 from I-10. Well, there's the HOV as it goes into Metro's Northwest Transit Center. Metro is our transit agency, and you see I-10 at the bottom. This is for Beltway 8. Beltway 8 is about, I guess we're about 8 miles. It's about 8 miles to the west, going away from downtown toward the suburban areas. Color, again, is very important. There's the HOV in green. The yellow shows widening new construction. There's a high-capacity transit corridor that Leanne mentioned that will be built by others. And down there at the bottom is the Hempstead Tollway, shown in gray. Ultimately will be built, but currently, as Leanne mentioned, there's not funding for it now. There, so you can see there's Union Pacific. These animations, the folks who do this, are just, I don't know how they put this together, but I'm really glad they do, because it makes our lives a lot easier. Not only are the main lanes widened here, you can see the yellow and the gray, there's the widening, but also there you'll see the orange coming up here on the right. Those are what we call collector distributors. And this is the main feature here that was different. Obviously, there's widening, but the collector distributor allows traffic to enter and exit from them instead of right in the middle of the main lanes. And so you've got folks who enter coming inbound onto the orange, and they ride the collector distributor past all the spaghetti at the interchange and enter afterwards. Same thing for people who are exiting, going the other way. And the idea is to reduce the congestion that was happening right at, you used to enter and exit on both sides of 290 right at Beltway 8. It made things a bit difficult, and the growth out here is unbelievable. It is incredible. We love the fact that people want to come to our area, but we've got to make sure we can move them around. And here it is, you're seeing here, this is really, excuse me, this is just another 360 picture of the interchange. I want to point out that you're seeing the gray connectors between 290 and Beltway 8. Those, for the most part, they didn't have to be reconstructed. That was really, that helped us a lot. On Interstate 10 and Beltway 8, they did have to do that, and that was a big challenge on that project. But here, as we continue to move around, there you can see the collector distributors in orange, and there are frontage roads. And then we try to show, there's the tollway is shown. We're looking now, really, this is from north looking south. And you can see these big buildings here to the bottom right. Those are large warehouse buildings. Again, it's important to show these landmarks to folks so they can kind of latch onto it and understand, okay, this is where I am, and this is what I'm looking at. This project, this is in what we call Project G, Segment 6. There are numbers internally and letters externally. This is just about done. And here we are coming in. There's the green HOV again. This is important. You can see we're one, the collector distributor on the left, that's the outbound where it begins, and then also you see where the one inbound ends. And we show access to a Metro park and ride. And then West Little York was a bridge that was one of the first things that was constructed. This is our latest one. We were very, very proud of this one. We had information meetings in this area because there's a lot of change. The 290 Highway 6 1960 area is about 14 to 15 miles from where our program office is, going out to the west. So this is, you're starting to get into not the newest suburban area, but certainly newer than where we are, or even where Beltway 8 is. And this is from, this, we have two views. This is Highway 6 going north. Colors are important. The new bridge is much bigger than the one there today. That's in yellow, and that's going to let people just travel through if they want to. What you see in blue will let them go from northbound Highway 6 to inbound 290. The goal of both of those is to keep people away from the very, very congested signals. It is so congested in this area in the morning and the evening. And so then you also see the orange frontage roads. Business owners in the area said, how are folks going to get to me if you're building this new bridge? And this shows you. It's 3 levels, the frontage road, at-grade access to the businesses, 290 is the second level, the widened main lanes, and there's that new bridge on top. And you can still see the frontage road. It is on the other side. It's difficult to see here. And the road changes names to 1960 north of 290. But you can see the frontage road, at-grade access to the businesses. If all I want to do is access these businesses, I can do so. The people who are on the bridge aren't in my way anymore. They can just go right on through without having to go through lights at 290 and a road you just saw called Wortham. Now the video shows everything meeting up. The bridge comes back down to grade, the frontage road meets up with them before a major street called Eldridge Parkway. We had so many people wanting to know what the bridge is going to look like because they just couldn't see it. It's hard to visualize what's not there. And this animation really helps. This next part is on 290. This is from the west going into town. As you can see again, there's that bridge up on top, level 1, the 290 main lane to level 2, in gray, there's the HOV again, and then you've got the frontage roads again. What's important also to see here, you can see at the top right, there's a blue bridge structure. That's for the 290 folks. When they're coming inbound or outbound in the evening and they want to go south, they have to have a bridge structure too. Here's the 360, kind of the spin effect again. And you're seeing also here, just to the left, there's that direct ramp from Highway 6 north to 290 inbound. This animation has just answered so many questions. We had meetings about, we had this running on 2 screens back January 18th. People saw it, they understood it. It helped so much to have this tool there. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate those folks who put these things together because they are fantastic.
Finishing up here, you can see our last slide. We have 2 different pictures on the left-hand side. The June 2011 is what it looked like outside of our window before construction started. The June 27 is what it looks like, well, almost currently. We've had a few months since then, but the change in what the view outside of our window, which is the 610-290 interchange. So you can see the different progress that's made and how we have worked through construction. As a reminder, I do want to let you know that we have the my290.com website, which has a wealth of information on there. If you have any questions, you can contact us through that website or through Houston PIO webmail at TxDOT.gov. Now it's a quarter till, and I think we still have time for some questions. Let's see, Russell, if there were any questions.
Do have a couple. If just to remind everybody, if you do have questions, please type them into the chat box and we will get them to our presenters. If we do not have time to get to all the questions, we will go ahead and take them and get the email responses to those questions. Let's see. This has been a long-term project. How long from design until you're current?
From design, we had the first designers, which really procured designers in 2 different stages. But the first set of designers were here at the 610-290 interchange, and they were under contract in 2008. And then, as we mentioned, with our first construction letting in 2011. The last construction letting associated with that group of designers was in the 2013 timeframe.
Okay. Let's see. How has the program management benefited from having a dedicated office?
Yes, we have had a dedicated program office since 2006, and we are co-located with a couple TxDOT staff that are right here on site with us. And so the primary benefit has been the responsiveness, both on being able to coordinate directly and immediately with TxDOT and TxDOT staff. So here they can provide direction and receive the oversight directly here. So it's been the primary benefit of the co-location and the immediate response, both on behalf of the design team and on TxDOT.
And you also have, it's the one place where folks can go. You know, they know this is where you go to get the answer. Not only helps them who are asking, but also the people at the TxDOT Houston District. Because, and we still get a lot of questions now, but they would spend so much time dealing with 290 questions. It's great to have them being able to say, here's where you can go, and everyone gets help in a more timely process.
Do other projects in the state of Texas have as much information at the TxDOT website as this one seems to have?
There's a variety. You know, there's different, we'll call them planning phase, where the schematics online, and really it's at TxDOT's discretion as to which ones they're going to be able to utilize their funds for. Generally, if it's a project specific or just, you know, one geographic location, they don't utilize the resources to provide that much information online. Since this was a corridor, TxDOT realized the amount of people they were going to be impacting at any one specific point in time. As we mentioned, with the corridor growth approaching 1 million in the 2040 timeframe, they realized there was going to be a lot of questions, and so they did utilize the resources to have as much on the website as possible for here. You're right.
Were there any special challenges that y'all experienced in managing such a large project?
It's not necessarily challenges, just fun we've had along the way. There's been, as we went through with the interim implementations and the multiple funding contests that we've gone through, you know, we've worked with multiple partner agencies as we went through and throughout the different implementations, and the different partner agencies have had different amounts of input depending on which implementation concept we were on at that time. But yeah, one of the challenges has been working with the multiple funding strategies and still making sure that we are progressing forward. So despite the fact that there's now a different partner in play or a different funding set of situations, we have always made sure that we progress forward and still work towards the end of the construction, still maintaining the same budget.
From a public involvement perspective, we had to learn really early on that you may have a presentation, but one size doesn't always fit all. Folks who are in the Raleigh area are going to have very different questions about cross streets and than folks who are near 610. So we tried to go ahead, and you have your basic presentation, but once construction got started, the construction pictures we show in different parts of the corridor are very different. You know, folks here at 610 may be somewhat interested in what's happening at Highway 6, but certainly not as much as the people who live out there. So it was really important to make sure to not go and say, here's, you know, presentation A, and this is our only version of it. You had to really be flexible.
Okay. I'll change the word. Looks like there were several opportunities in the changing of construction oversight / management by TxDOT, and then ultimately testing done by HNTB. Is that correct? And then can you express how those were, I guess, opportunities were taken or addressed?
Yeah, that was really based on constraints that TxDOT was recognizing at that point in time. Because, you know, as mentioned early on when we first started, you know, TxDOT traditionally has done all the construction inspection in-house. Sorry. And so when we first started, the construction management and the construction inspection and the testing was completely led by TxDOT. But then, driven by TxDOT resources and constraints they had at that time, they did request support. And so originally its PNC team did provide inspection services with, again, TxDOT still managing the construction management internally. As we progressed through and there were additional constraints put on the TxDOT organization themselves, they did make the decision to proceed And actually, there were separate contracts that were let out during the CEI, the construction engineering and inspection firms, for handling some of the later projects. And so on those, it was completely outsourced, we'll call it, where the construction management and inspection and the testing was provided by the consulting community. So with each of those, we did work with the state to provide the knowledge transfer from each, from whatever team was working, from TxDOT to consulting to the consulting community, from one consultant to another kind of thing, to make sure that there was a smooth transition. And the TxDOT did continue to provide the same level of service no matter who their team was. There has always been a consistency as to how we have been, we as a whole have been implementing the construction management along this corridor, which in short, it was mainly driven based on internal TxDOT constraints as to how they made their decisions to proceed on construction management on this corridor.
All right. One more, let's see. With the duration in time and scope, are there any challenges in moving from the design phase into the construction phase?
We primarily faced, the normal things. There wasn't anything that we hadn't anticipated. I mean, we knew that based on the availability of construction funding that came across, and with the acceleration of some of our construction design, that we were going to be facing challenges in construction, specifically with the right-of-way acquisition. Because with the overlap of the design, the right-of-way acquisition, and the construction phase, we knew we were going to have to implement the TCP mitigation strategies that we talked about earlier. And so to address that, as you're letting for construction and then selecting the contractor and awarding, we utilize that time to identify specifically what implementation strategies do we need to implement in the traffic control revision so that we would be ready and the contractor could still hit the ground running. And then, as mentioned, we had the utility issues that were really just an outcropping of that one, that when you haven't acquired your right-of-way, you have the utility relocation problems. And that was basically a stress on the utility community, because with 38 miles under construction all at one time, which is not what they had originally anticipated nor budgeted for, the utility companies didn't have the resources to be able to accomplish the utility relocations in the timeline that TxDOT managed, or TxDOT needed. And so basically we all had to work as one team. And so that's what we had to keep finding strategies as we went along, that, no matter who it was on the team that needed the support, it was, on the right-of-way side, on the utility side, on the construction side, on the design side, we all had to work together for a solution to keep moving forward. And so that was really just the theme that we kept going throughout there, that whatever the problem was, best to anticipate it and then find a strategy to mitigate it and keep moving forward so you can achieve the end of construction.
And utility relocation is it's one of the things the public really doesn't see. They're like, hey, I see you guys, things are dug up. How come we don't see concrete being poured and you finishing the frontage road near my business? And so we have to explain to them, well, they're having to move, whether it's internet fiber, whether it's phone fiber, natural gas pipelines. I learned the challenge of having to move those and making sure those are moved before you can build. So that's from the public involvement end, that's something that folks really can't see, and it's something we try to explain to them as best we can.
All right. Mike, I don't have any other questions come through on my end. Do you have any?
Nope, nothing else on our end.
All right. Well, once again, I want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. As mentioned before, individual registrants should receive an attendance acknowledgement without further action. For those attending with the group, the site coordinator will receive PDH certificate for distribution. I want to thank our presenters, Leanne and Mike. You've done an excellent job. This was great.